before we use literature or story for therapy or for education or for whatever, first of all, we have to be convinced about its relevance. Whenever the scientific culture took over, there were thinkers and philosophers who very strongly defended the literature tradition. We are becoming human by by storytelling and by as I said, by reading stories and by telling stories. So both reading and telling are important. What is story basically? Because in the beginning, if you look at the etymology, story and history were the same. So story is not the business of a few people here and there, some school teachers or some people who teach literature and so on. So story is part of the humanity actually. So it is humanity making. If there is no story, there is no humanity. If there is no history, there is no humanity. So we have to understand story in a very comprehensive manner. It is not outside us, like it's a very small area where there are stories are there. So, continuing with that idea, the story is like human making, I would say, because to give an example, like there is the world about there, but we have to make the world, or there is the time, but we have to make the time by clock or whatever, and there is the week. Geography, but we have to make a map to know what it is. So similarly, there is life, there is a humanity, but how to make meaning? So we make meaning of humanity by stories in a way, and definitely language is necessary to do that. And that is my second point. That story, therefore, there is no, CP Snow talked about this, great divide between the scientific culture and the non-scientific culture. So somehow the story got cornered or marginalized, and then came what we call the STEM culture, science culture. So stories of some people, and it is of some. It is the business of some people. But story belongs to the humanity at large. Humanity, it's a common legacy that we all share. So therefore, it's the business and it is the duty and the mission of all of us to preserve it, continue with it, use it, and so on. So therefore, Srimar was mentioning about the policy thing. Therefore, now the policymakers are heavily, prejudiced towards story and literature and so on. So much investment in science, saying that science alone matters. No, I think that is where we have to work on. Like policymakers, it is also. Story belongs to them also because they are also part of the story. Their own life is also part of the story. So without story making, I think there is no humanity. And I think, then something, literature, whether when you say story, definitely we also mean literature. So literature is basically, and story is basically, I would say, human making. That is why in the classical times it was called humanitas, and like human making. So references were already made about certain values of empathy and kindness and other things. So those are possible again through story making. And then last thing I want to say is that first of all, I think we should be convinced about the relevance of story. Only then we deal with it. What happens is that we are in a panic or we are not sure about the relevance of story or literature or humanities. And therefore, all across history, we will find that there is very strong defense of literature and story over the years. We can find so many texts, etc. So whenever the scientific culture took over, there were thinkers and philosophers who very strongly defended the literature tradition. But even now, storytellers, I mean English teachers, humanities teachers are not sure about the relevance and the importance of story. So what they do is like, as I said, they are in a kind of panic, and even when AI come, they are like in a panic. How to use a story in the AI world, and therefore my point is like we should not be in panic, and we should not lose story by trying to connect it to AI and so on. And it happened in the past also, like when science came and when other disciplines came. The humanities people were then they were not sure about themselves. Their departments, they had said, we have to connect you with other departments. This is what we call interdisciplinary, etc. So as a result, what happened is that literature or story slowly got weakened. So my point is like whether before we use literature or story for therapy or for education or for whatever, first of all we have to be convinced about its relevance. So my point to end with is that so storytelling is something very existential, something which is part of ourselves. So it is, Sartre said we have existence and essence. No, there is the existence, but we have to find our own essence. Similarly, we are all human and we are all in the world, but the fact that we are becoming human by by storytelling and by as I said by reading stories and by telling stories. So both reading and telling are important in that sense. And I don't know if I made sense because that is the way I look at story, because it is story is not outside us. It's stories that make us in a way. So it is part of our own essence. It's part of our own self. It's a part of our own existence. So out of that, in a fundamental, out of that fundamental conviction comes the use of stories for therapy or for love or for values and so on.